I am old enough now to pour tea without watching the cup, old enough to feel the steam find my cheekbones and know whether the day will be gentle or not. My name is Nayella. I am a mother. Once, a long time ago when my daughter was 7, a man I had loved planned my ruin and called it custody. If you stay with me until the end, I will tell you how a child's small tablet, cracked at the corner like a spider web trying not to be seen, saved us both. The night I met him, the city smelled like rain that couldn't make up its mind. Tmain held his umbrella over strangers and laughed from the stomach like a man who thought storms were just weather. He said my name carefully, as if it were a fragile thing he meant to return. In those days, I believed attention was proof. He brought me coffee with too much sugar, remembered my sister's birthday, pretended he didn't like dancing and then did it anyway, badly. There are beginnings that feel like a porch light coming on. We moved under that light and called it home. Our apartment in those early years had a window that swallowed sunset and a stove that clicked like a cricket when it was time to listen. We bought second-hand furniture that smelled faintly of oranges, taught each other recipes we'd learned from watching our mothers with our chins on the counter. Sometimes the sink wouldn't drain unless you sang to it, so we sang. When Zariah came into the world, the nurse placed her on my chest and the air turned to warm silk. She was a small, serious moon, a girl who blinked like she'd been here before and chose to come back. Do you remember the first time you understood your body could hold 2 temperatures at once, milk and sweat, fear and joy? Motherhood is a language of simultaneous truths. I kept a little notebook by the bed with sentences I didn't want to forget. Her breath smells like cake when she is sleeping. The hum of the refrigerator is the quietest lullaby. His hand on my shoulder feels like a roof, not a door. I am not going to lie to you and say the shadows weren't already learning our corners. They were. He liked people to see him doing kindness. He liked me to be grateful for it in public. There were small edits to my sentences that I let him make because love is an editor if you let it be. Wear the blue dress, not the green. Don't invite Danny, she talks too much. It's better if you handle the daycare. My job is intense. And it was. He wore stress like cologne. He said things were tight and then bought himself a watch that announced his wrist to the room. When Zariah was 5, he stayed late more often. Valencia entered the story like Greece enters a hinge, quiet, helpful at first, then everywhere. She had a voice that never waited for the end of a sentence. We're a team, she told the staff, and the word we moved in, carrying boxes. When she met me, she called me babe in a way that made my name feel cheap. The first time I found her hair clip in his car, he laughed. It's a clip, New York, he said, not a confession. And because I was tired, and because the dishes still needed doing, and because the rent was due and the school wanted money for a field trip, I called it small. The body is a master of minimizing what it cannot face. We began to break in ways strangers couldn't see. He took photographs of our living room when I was too tired to clean, zoomed in on the pile of blocks, the blanket tent that Zariah insisted was a castle. You've let yourself go, he said softly, just for me. Courts don't like chaos. The word court sat on the table like a glass with fingerprints. He started putting luxury charges on a card I'd never seen before, spa days, a hotel under the excuse of a client dinner that ran late. Then a new phone plan I didn't know he'd opened, 2 lines, one for him and an extra for work emergencies. I was the emergency. I just didn't know it yet. When he finally said the word divorce, it arrived like a weather alert on a bright afternoon. We were at the kitchen table, the light, kind and unprepared. It's time, he said, pouring creamer he didn't drink. We've grown apart. It's better for Zariah. Valencia's perfume lived in the word better. We'll keep it civil, he added, and smoothed his tie as if civility were a tie pin. That same week a woman I'd never met called me from a number that sounded official. I'm Dr. Val, she said warmly, a child psychologist who can help your family transition. I've already been in touch with your husband. Do you think it's possible for a lie to smell like antiseptic? Her voice had the slow quiet of a waiting room. I wanted help. I wanted someone to say, you're not crazy. So I made an appointment. She asked me questions in a room that was too clean. Are you sleeping? Do you feel overwhelmed? Do you ever lose track of time? Do you find yourself crying for no reason? I answered honestly, because honesty is the only cup I have. She wrote things down not like a friend but like a collector. She didn't ask a single question about him. When I brought Zariah, she gave my daughter a teddy bear and told me to wait outside. They were in there 20 minutes. When they came out, Zariah's eyes were dry like a lake that knows drought. "Mommy," she said that night, whispering into her pillow, "if I had to choose, would you still come to my school?" I began to feel watched in my own house. The phones listened. The laptop listened. He asked me questions only a person who had lifted my passwords would know. My cranky teapot became the only thing that sounded like it was on my side. I dried my hands on the small towel by the sink and looked at the calendar. Court hearing in 6 weeks. He told me not to worry about the money. He would handle it. I handled my breath. I handled my child's hair with the gentlest brush. I handled the kitchen like a chapel. And at night, when the neighborhood turned to soft hums and occasional sirens, I whispered a single question into the dark: do you think a mother can be erased if she remembers herself? If any of this feels like your kitchen, if the light is kind and still you cannot swallow, write one word below so I know where you are, here. If you can, stay with me. The worst hasn't happened yet. The best hasn't either. Early life leaves fingerprints on the doors you open later. I grew up in a house that ironed its curtains on Saturdays. My mother kept a jar of buttons in the pantry, and when people came over she poured them into a bowl like candy. We had very little, but she could make a table look like a promise. My father worked 2 jobs and came home with hands that made the air smell like copper. They loved each other in the old way, hard work and weather reports and the occasional dance in the kitchen while the radio got it wrong. When I was 9, a woman from church told my mother that children are discounts on a man's mercy. My mother set down her wooden spoon and said, "Not mine." She taught me to fix a hem and carry a spare key and make stew from a shamefully small number of carrots. A good home, she said, is not a showroom. It is a ship. There will be storms. I married with that sentence folded into my pocket. Our storms at first were the polite kind of flat tires, rent increases, the flu. I learned how to sew dinosaur knees back onto pajamas and how to make a landlord believe we were worth renewing. When Zariah giggled for the first time, she sounded like a spoon in a glass, and the whole apartment lifted its chin. Somewhere between kindergarten registration and the first wobbly tooth, Tmain decided that attention from me was a faucet he could turn off and on. If I paused before praising him, he would go quiet for 2 days. If I asked where he was, he asked why I didn't trust him. If I cried, he called me dramatic. When Valencia arrived, he started smiling at me like I was a client he wanted to close. On my birthday he posted a photograph, flowers in a white room, a note that read "to my rock," and forgot to come home. I kept the photograph. I didn't keep the note. In the weeks after he filed, the apartment took on a new personality. Piles that organized themselves into accusations, mornings that tasted like metal. He'd show up for pickup and bring Zariah a toy that made noise, as if volume could make loyalty. "How's my girl?" he'd coo, and then say to me, "Lo, you look tired." He brought Dr. Val into every conversation. "She agrees," he'd say, "that the disorganization is hurting Z. She thinks you need rest. Maybe a break." Valencia's perfume on the word break again. I started to suspect. I started to check the pictures in his phone when he slept. The messy corners looked curated. The credit card charges had a pattern, gifts timed to my hearings, hotel nights that corresponded to his late meetings. Valencia's text previewed on his screen in the bathroom once, her face an oval of light, the words "baby," she bought it. I got a lawyer. Miss Henson had hair that announced the day and eyes that did math without moving. She asked for everything. I brought her a stack of photographs that did not show chaos, but childhood. Her paralegal scanned drawings of purple elephants and tall houses with crooked chimneys and a mother who wore a triangle dress because it was the only shape Zariah knew. I brought printouts from the bank with small amounts missing like sips someone takes when they aren't thirsty, $97. 12, $148. 74, so you don't notice the thirst behind it. I brought a list of the times I found my laptop open when I had shut it, the way a room smells when a door has been opened and closed and no one says why. It's a campaign, Ms. Henson said. We'll treat it like one, but tell the truth. We won't fight dirty. We'll fight daylight. The first hearing felt like standing in line for a ride you know will make you sick. The courtroom air was refrigerated into obedience. The judge's bench was a stage that refused applause. Across the aisle, Valencia sat in a charcoal suit with a clipboard, unprofessional in the precise way that gets mistaken for readiness. She wore a simple gold chain and the expression of a woman accustomed to being allowed. When they called Dr. Valencia Moore, she stood. Child psychologist, she said into the microphone, specializing in high-conflict custody. She spoke in numbers to disguise how she'd come by them. I administered a standardized instrument. The mother reported sleep disturbance, hopelessness, and disorganized thinking. The child exhibited reluctance to return to the maternal home. Reluctance. That was the word they used for my daughter walking slowly because she wanted to hold both of our hands a few seconds more. I wanted to stand and shout that 7-year-olds move through longing like honey. Ms. Henson touched my wrist with 2 fingers. I did not shout. They presented photographs, our couch with blankets mid-nap, the kitchen sink during a cake that went wrong and then right, a laundry basket in the hall waiting for legs. Valencia described a pattern of neglect. She recommended temporary primary placement with the father. My throat turned to dust. Tmain looked at his shoes like the shoes weren't any of this. When it was our turn, Ms. Henson asked Valencia about her license. From which board, doctor, she said, gentle as in 4. Where is your number listed? Valencia smiled. It's a specialty certificate, she said. A private consortium. Not traditional. The judge frowned. Submit it, she said. All of it. Miss Henson nodded like a woman who had never forgotten a field trip form in her life. The judge set the final hearing for 6 weeks out and warned us, no theatrics, no public sparring, no photographs on social media without consent. That night, Tmain posted a picture of him and Zariah at the park with a caption about resilience and fathers. I stared at the screen until the words took on the shape of a desk I wanted to flip. I didn't. I tucked my daughter into bed and pressed my nose to her hair until my bones learned the smell again. Do you think doubt can become furniture? It did. I moved around it. I tripped over it. I pretended it didn't match the room. In the 3rd week, Zariah started bringing me her small tablet to watch videos of baby ducks and children unwrapping toys with voices too bright. Can I leave it under my pillow? She asked. It makes me feel brave. I said yes. Her tablet was old, the corner mended with a sticker from a dentist's office. That corner is the hinge on which this whole story turned. If any of this sounds like your hallway, the careful turns, the deep breaths between rooms, tell me one word below so we know each other. Steady. Listening. Begin. And if you can, stay. The weather changes soon. The night I broke and didn't break was a Wednesday. I had made spaghetti that forgot its salt. Zariah tried to be polite about the forgetting and drank her milk too fast. He was late. When he arrived, he brought a toy that made noise and set it on the table as if sound could negotiate kindness. We've decided, he announced, standing in a kitchen he'd already left. It's best for Z that she spends the school week with me. Dr. Val agrees. He always said we when he meant I and God. No, I said, so quietly the plates forgot to vibrate. He smirked, the smirk of a boy who once discovered that ants will drown if you flood their hill. You don't get to decide, he said. The court will. Valencia texted him then. His phone lit the room with someone else's affirmation. After bedtime, the apartment thinned. I washed the spaghetti smell out of the pan with water that did not forgive and then sat in the dark, holding my shape together with both hands. In our bedroom, the ceiling fan ticked like an old clock trying not to be retired. I heard his voice in the hallway outside, low as a threat whispered into a church. He didn't know I was there. He called Valencia. She's unraveling, he said, satisfied. We'll have the meltdown on record next week. Can you bring the statements? The ones about the charges? Yeah, the spa, the hotel. I'll say she did it. She won't be able to prove otherwise. I stood up, went to the door, and listened because listening is what you do when people start narrating your life without you. The psychologist letter, he said into the phone, and then laughed. You mean your letter, and the name Valencia dropped its doctor coat and stood there in its underwear. We'll finish her on Friday. When people tell you who they are, believe them. But better, record it. I reached for my own phone, but it was on the table by the stove, too far. I turned to look for Zariah, to be sure she was asleep, and saw the small, cracked tablet shining a low little square from under her pillow. She had tapped the camera on by accident earlier and taken 17 photographs of the inside of the pillowcase. I slid the tablet from under her head like a card from a deck and tucked her hair back without the pillow noticing. Then I pressed record and slipped it under my own pillow like a seed. The rest of the week was a succession of small manipulations disguised as errands. He asked for the health insurance cards and then lost them. He moved the car seat into his trunk and forgot to bring it back. He brought me forms to sign, important, urgent, highlighted, stamped. I took them to Miss Henson, who read them the way a hawk reads the field. No, she said to each page. No. On Thursday, I found a small camera tucked into the plant on the mantel, its black lens a polite eye. I took it down, placed it on the table, and said nothing. That night, he hissed from the doorway, if you keep sabotaging, the judge will see. On Friday morning, he started a fight over socks. Socks. He needed my temper, wanted it like kindling. You never do anything right, he said calmly, clinically. The old me would have cried. The new me stopped stirring the oatmeal. I make a good life, I said. You ruin it. He raised his phone, red dot glowing. I put down the spoon. Zariah stood in the doorway with the teddy bear Dr. Val had given her, except now the bear looked like a listening device. When he left to take Zariah to school, he kissed the air for the camera's benefit and we all breathed in the perfume of performance. That afternoon, I picked up Zariah early and took her to the park with the swings that squeak like honesty. Mommy, she said after the third push, if I tell the judge something true, will she be mad? I crouched, put my hands on her knees so the swing stopped. No, baby, I said. Judges like truth. That's their favorite food. She leaned toward me, breath milk warm. I have a video, she whispered. But I don't know how to show it without Dad seeing. My heart sat down. The world didn't tilt. It aligned. On your tablet? I asked. She nodded. Under the pillow. It listens at night. I didn't mean to. But then I did. We practiced being brave by doing small brave things. We ordered hot cocoa and paid an exact change. We crossed the street only when the light said it was our turn. We went home and put the tablet in my bag between two folded shirts that smelled like sunshine. I told her a story that night about a princess whose voice was stolen and how she found it at the bottom of a lake, wrapped in a reed. Zariah fell asleep with her fist around the teddy bear's arm. I lay beside her and memorized the room, the shadow the nightlight made on the wall, the whisper of cars like the ocean, the almost sound of a child deciding to save her mother. If any of this sounds like your courage, small, soft, disguised as errands, say one word below so I can wave to you from my window. Here. Brave. Waiting. And if you can, stay. The courtroom has blue carpet. The air will be cold. But the heat we carry is enough. The morning of the hearing, I ironed a blouse until it behaved. I braided Zariah's hair into 2 ropes that knew their purpose. Miss Henson met us on the courthouse steps with the face of a woman who trusts paper to do its work. We walked through the metal detector like people going through a ritual they don't believe in but honor anyway. In the hallway, the vending machine hummed and the benches learned our weight. Inside, Valencia sat again in charcoal with her clipboard, composed like a newly sharpened pencil. Tmain wore blue with a tie that called itself humble. He didn't look at me. He looked at the judge's calendar as if he could adjust it. The bailiff called our names. We stood. His lawyer went first, words smooth as hotel glass. Your Honor, the evidence will show a pattern of instability in the maternal home, documented by a licensed specialist. He handed up the reports. The judge adjusted her glasses. We will get to that, she said. Miss Henson stood and said, Your Honor, we will show manipulation, installing of cameras without consent, and financial misrepresentation. She handed up a stack that rustled like dry leaves. Valencia took the stand. Miss Henson asked her again, softly, like someone asking a child to repeat their address, From which board is your license? Valencia deflected to outcomes, to the child's best interest. Miss Henson pressed, gentle as gravity. Your license number? Valencia smiled. I consult, she said. I'm independently certified. The judge asked her to spell the certifying body. Valencia spelled a consortium that did not exist outside a website registered last month. The courtroom's air leaned forward. Then it was my turn. Mrs., the judge said, and I sat, hands in my lap like polite birds. Miss Henson asked simple questions. Do you love your daughter? Yes. Did you ever endanger her? No. What is your routine? Breakfast at 7, hair in 2 braids, socks that match until they don't, a kiss on the forehead that misses and lands on the eyebrow. How do you respond to the allegation of disorganization? Miss Henson asked. I have a child, I said. We live in evidence of living. I clean at night. I have photographs if the court wants to see the other half of the day. The judge smiled very slightly in a way that made me feel the possibility of afternoons again. Then Miss Henson did the thing we had whispered about in the stairwell before we came in. Your Honor, she said, with the court's permission, the child has something she would like to present. The judge looked over her glasses. We don't usually, she began, and then saw Zariah, small and steady as a candle. Approach, the judge said, voice not unkind. Zariah walked to the clerk with knees that remembered playgrounds. She handed over her small tablet, the corner cracked and mended with a sticker from the dentist that had a crocodile with too many teeth. The clerk plugged it in. The screen lit the courtroom like a small, blue moon. The video began with the roof of our hallway. Then voices. His voice. We'll finish her on Friday, it said, and the microphone, cheap as it was, loved the consonants. Valencia's voice joined, losing its waiting room tone. I'll testify, she said, laughter like ice in the glass. It's not like they check. Paper rustled. Bank transfers are ready, he said. I'll move her savings Monday. She'll be too busy crying to notice. I did not look at him. I looked at the judge, whose eyes did the thing grown-ups' eyes do when they decide to be a grown-up in public. The courtroom kept breathing. The video continued, plans to stage photographs, a note to gift Zariah a puppy to seal the deal, language about making her snap on camera and weaponizing the meltdown. Then, the sound of a kiss. Then the word babe as if it were a receipt. When the video ended, you could hear the vending machine down the hall and the pages in the judge's notebook turning themselves. The judge asked 2 questions. Mister, did you participate in the making of this recording? His lawyer stood. Your Honor, we object to, the judge held up a palm that had practiced. Sit, she said. To him again, yes or no? He swallowed. It's not what it sounds, yes or no? Yes, he whispered, and the word fell off the table like a utensil. Ms. Moore, the judge said to Valencia, state your license number for the record. Silence. Bailiff, the judge said next, so calmly the room chilled. Please take Ms. Moore into custody pending fraud charges. Mister, you will accompany. She turned to me. Mrs., you will have full legal and physical custody pending final orders. All marital assets are frozen. We will reconvene to divide them equitably with the knowledge we've just gained. She looked at Zariah. Young lady, you did a brave thing. You may go hold your mother's hand. My daughter walked to me as if through a tunnel and fit her fingers between mine where they were carved to be. The judge's gavel did not slam. It set itself down, perfect and sufficient. The bailiff's cuffs sounded like tiny doors closing. The room stood for a moment in that peculiar light that fills spaces where harm has been interrupted. I closed my eyes and smelled lemon from the clerk's wipes, old carpet, the faint sweetness of Zariah's hair. I said a thank you that did not need an address. If any of this feels like your breath finally filling your lungs, if you are the person who pressed record and waited, tell me one word below, light. And if you can, stay. Peace has its own weather, and I want to show you how it changes a kitchen. Afterward, afternoons meant something again. Paperwork is not romance, but it is respect. We met with Ms. Henson and signed our names so many times my signature learned to relax. The court issued orders like scaffolding around a rebuilding, custody to me, supervised visitation if he complied with counseling and restitution, restraining orders where they belonged. Valencia pled to what she could not outrun, the state took it the rest of the way. The credit card lies unwound themselves in bank offices that smelled like pens. The cameras left my plants. The apartment forgot to be afraid and began to be a home again, laundry on Sunday, soup on Tuesday, the good towels on the line only when the weather asked nicely. Zariah slept with the teddy bear at her back like a guard. Sometimes she would wake and look at the ceiling and then at me, confirming that the roof meant it. Did I do it right? She asked once, her voice the size of a question mark. You told the truth, I said. Truth is right even when it shakes the room. We began new habits. We said grace for small things out loud, warm socks from the dryer, milk that doesn't run out, the sound of keys that belong to us. On Saturdays we went to the library and sat in the sun wedge on the carpet and read the same page twice because that is what peace allows. We put the tablet in a drawer, not as a trophy but as a tool resting. I found work at a little daycare 3 blocks away from the courthouse, irony with gentle hands. My days smelled like washable paint and tiny apples. I learned that children will forgive every flaw in your house if your face is honest when they look up. At noon I walked to a cafe where the owner remembered my order and asked about Zariah without asking about him. I learned my body again, the way my hips hold me, the way my back wishes for stretches, the way my hands still know how to turn sugar and butter into an afternoon. We moved, not far, to a place with a porch that holds a chair the way an old friend holds your story. I planted basil in a chipped pot and watched it decide to live. I wrote letters to my mother and folded them into the cookbook she gave me, the one with the stain that looks like a continent. I wrote one final letter to the court, not to argue but to thank them for liking the taste of truth. I wrote a letter to my past self and put it in the freezer for a day when heat was too much. It said, simply, you did not imagine it. You are not crazy. You are allowed to have a door. Sometimes, now, when the night is kind and the traffic writes its long poem down our block, I take out the notebook I kept during the storm and read one page, then another. I do not become brave all at once. I become brave by remembering. I write 3 truths again, because they are good companions. The tea is warm. The window is open. The light is kind. And a fourth, because I have earned it, my daughter knows my face when I laugh. Do you think forgiveness and justice are enemies? They aren't. Justice is a boundary. Forgiveness is the air inside it that you breathe when you are no longer holding your breath for someone else. I have forgiven in a way that is private and does not cancel consequence. I have forgiven the part of me that thought love required silence. I have forgiven the day I salted the spaghetti wrong and cried because the noodles tasted like doubt. I have not gone back. That is not what forgiveness asks. If any part of this held your hand, leave a word so the next person knows where to sit when they come in from the weather. Here, steady, begin. And if you want to sit in this kind of room again, quiet, truthful, made of breathing instead of performance, subscribe. Not for numbers. For company. For the relief of hearing someone say what you needed to hear before you knew you needed it. I am old enough now to pour tea without watching the cup. The steam finds my cheekbones and tells me if the day will be gentle, and most of them are. In the drawer with the tablet is a drawing of a house with a crooked chimney and two people on the porch holding hands. The sky is too blue. The grass is too green. The proportions are wrong. It is perfect.